She was, by every measure, the favorite, possibly the greatest gymnast who has ever lived. Her country was watching. Her team was counting on her. The pressure was, I can't even imagine. The weight of expectations that had been placed on her shoulders would have buckled most people before they even got into the arena. And she stepped back.
Welcome to a special summer series edition of Magic in the Moment, Mindfulness in Real Time with Clayton Platt. In this limited edition series, Clayton will be going through some of the core concepts of his new book, Magic in the Moment, Mindfulness in Real Time. This special summer series is brought to you by Meditation for Leadership.
Leadership happens in that space before the decision. That's the work of Meditation for Leadership, helping you pause under pressure, notice what's really happening, and choose how you respond instead of reacting. The foundation of effective leadership and superior employee performance. Ready to create that space? Visit meditationforleadership.org. Welcome back to Magic in the Moment. This is episode 5 of the summer series, and I want to start today not with something from my own life, but with someone else's. The world had a lot to say about this in the summer of 2021. Simone Biles walked away. If you remember the Tokyo Olympics, you remember that moment. She was, by every measure, the favorite, possibly the greatest gymnast who has ever lived. Her country was watching. Her team was counting on her. The pressure was, I can't even imagine. The weight of expectations that had been placed on her shoulders would have buckled most people before they even got into the arena. And she stepped back. She cited her mental health. She said, I need to take care of myself first. The reaction was enormous. Most of it supportive. Some of it decidedly not. Because we live in a culture that has a complicated relationship with self-care, one that often reads it as weakness, as selfishness, as letting other people down. And today, I want to make the case that Simone Biles did something profoundly courageous, that what she modeled in front of the entire world is something most of us need to practice in our own lives every single day, usually in much quieter ways. So this is episode 5 of Magic in the Moment summer series, drawn from chapter 5 of the book by the same title. It's called Self-Care is Job 1. And it might be exactly what most of us need to hear. Now, I've thought about Simone Biles a lot since that summer. And here's what strikes me the most. The decision she made wasn't impulsive. It wasn't a breakdown. It was, and I read about this in chapter 5, an act of supreme clarity that can come only from a still mind, a calm mind, in the middle of enormous turbulence with the entire world watching. She found a way to get quiet enough to hear what was actually true. And what was true was this. Her mental and physical health had to come first. Think about what it takes to arrive at that conclusion under those circumstances. The internal critic alone, the voice telling her she was letting the country down, letting her team down, letting herself down, that would have been deafening. Most of us would fold under a fraction of that pressure. We push through, we perform, we tell ourselves, we'll deal with it later. And then later becomes now. And we're less present, we're less available, less ourselves than the people who need us actually need us to be. What Simone Biles understood and modeled publicly at the cost of real criticism is something that every flight attendant in the world has been trying to tell us for decades. Put your own oxygen mask on first before assisting others. You've heard that instruction. Every time you've ever flown anywhere, you've heard it. And every time most of us nod and don't really take it in. Because it runs against something deep inside us. The instinct that says taking care of yourself first is selfish. That people around you, your family, your team, your clients, the person across the aisle who needs help, those people come first. And that's what strength looks like. That's what being a good person looks like. Except here's what actually happens at altitude when the cabin loses pressure. If you don't put your mask on first, you have somewhere between 15 and 30 seconds of useful consciousness before hypoxia sets in. 15 seconds. And then you're not helping anyone. You're one more person who needs help. Self-care isn't selfishness. It's oxygen. I want to tell you about a moment that helped me understand this. A dear friend of mine serves alongside me in the Stephen Ministry, and that is a Christian caregiving program that trains lay people to provide one-on-one support to other people facing real difficulty, grief, illness, personal crisis. So my Stephen Ministry colleague came to me once when she herself was going through some pretty hard things personally, and she felt, in her words, incapable of properly serving the person she had been assigned to support. And I asked her one simple question. What would you say to the person you're supporting if she were in your exact situation now? The light came on because she knew exactly what she would say. She would be warm, encouraging, compassionate, human. She would tell that person that struggle is part of the shared human condition, that needing help doesn't make you weak, that you deserve the same care that you so freely offer to everyone else. And then I said, you need to do that for yourself. There's a researcher named Kristen Neff. She's a professor at UT Austin, and she spent decades studying self-compassion. And she breaks it down into 3 elements that I find really, really helpful. The first is self-kindness versus self-judgment. When something goes wrong, when we miss the mark, when we fall short, when we fail, our default is often to be harder on ourselves than we would ever be on someone we love. We assign blame. We replay. We tell ourselves, we should have known better. And none of that moves us forward. It keeps us trapped in this loop of self-criticism that depletes the very resources that we need to actually improve. The second is common humanity versus isolation. When we're struggling, there's a particular loneliness to it. The sense that somehow we are uniquely failing, that everyone else is managing what we can't. But the truth is the exact opposite. Whatever you're going through right now is part of the shared human condition. Not because that makes it easier, but because it means you don't have to carry it alone. The third is mindfulness versus over-identification. And this is where our practice becomes directly relevant. When we're caught in a difficult experience, the mind wants to make it mean something about us. Not just that this hard thing is happening, but this hard thing defines us, that we are this hard thing. Mindfulness gives us the capacity to see it differently. This is happening. It isn't permanent. It doesn't own me. 3 elements: self-kindness, common humanity, mindfulness. Neff calls them the 3 components of self-compassion. And I call them the instructions for putting your own oxygen mask on first. Now, here's something that I think should be obvious, but often isn't. We don't do our best work, provide our best care, or show up as our best selves when our own resources are depleted. It sounds so simple, right? And yet, most of the cultures that we work in, and many of the families that we grew up in, operate on exactly the opposite assumption, that pushing through is virtuous, that running on empty is strength. that needing rest or support or a moment to take stock is somehow a failure of character. Simone Biles came back from Tokyo. She won 3 gold medals and a silver at the Paris Olympics in 2024. No one, I don't think, will ever know exactly what her season of self-care made possible. But something made the difference. And I'd put good money on the fact that learning, perhaps maybe for the first time in her life, that her own well-being mattered was at least a part of it. A caregiver who fails to attend to their own needs becomes, over time, less attentive, less aware, less compassionate, precisely when those qualities are most needed. And the same is true for leaders, for parents, for teachers, for anyone whose work requires them to show up fully for other people. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You've heard that too. And like the oxygen mask, you've probably let it pass through without quite letting it land. Well, let it land today. Our practice is directly useful here, not as a relaxation technique, but as an early warning system. The more we sit, the more finely tuned our awareness becomes. We start to notice earlier when our resources are running thin. The slight shortening of patience, the tightening that shows up in the body before it shows up in our behavior, the moments when we're performing presence rather than actually being present. That early warning matters because by the time most of us recognize we're depleted, we've been depleted for a while. And that awareness that meditation builds gives us a longer runway, more time between the signal and the need for action. There's a concept in chapter 5 I want to name here, and it's the idea of mindful boundaries. Not boundaries as a defensive wall, but boundaries as a form of clarity. Brene Brown says it simply and well. Clear is kind. Knowing what you need, being honest about it, communicating it without apology, without aggression, without hedging it into something so soft it doesn't land. Again, that's the oxygen mask practice in relationship. Not taking more than you need, not giving more than you have. Staying clear about where you are so the people around you can actually trust what you're telling them. So I keep coming back to that image of Simone Biles in Tokyo. Not because her situation is like ours. It isn't. But most of us will never face anything close to that kind of public pressure, that kind of expectation, that kind of scrutiny. Yet the internal experience, the critic that says you're letting people down, that says your needs are less important than everyone else's, that says pushing through is the only honorable option, that experience is universal. And that voice lives in most of us. And what Simone Biles demonstrated in front of the entire world is that answering that voice with honesty, with genuine self-compassion, with the willingness to say, I need to take care of myself first. It's not weakness. It's one of the bravest things a person can do. To reach the conclusion that her well-meaning mattered in that moment, under that pressure, required a still mind, a calm mind, the kind of mind that knows the difference between fear and clarity. And that's what this practice is building every time we sit, every time we follow the breath, every time we notice the body's signals before they become crises. We're building the capacity to hear ourselves clearly when it actually matters. I want to offer you something simple that you can carry with you from this episode. It's not a framework, not a checklist. It's just one question. What do you need right now that you haven't given yourself permission to have. It might be rest. It might be time alone or time with the people you love. It might be a conversation that you've been putting off. It might be as simple as a glass of water and a breath before the next thing. Whatever it is, you already know, and you've probably known for a while. Self-care isn't reward for finishing everything on your list. It's what makes it possible to keep showing up for the list at all. Put your own mask on first. So this is the end of the 5th and final episode of the Magic in the Moment summer series. And I want to say something before we close. Over these last 5 episodes, we've talked about beginning again, about listening, really listening, about why we need each other, about the gift of not knowing, and today about taking care of ourselves so that we can actually show up for all of it. These aren't separate ideas. They're actually all pointing at the same thing, the practice of being here, really here in this moment with this person in this life. That's what chapter 5 is about. Actually, that's what all 5 chapters taken together are all about. If any of these episodes have pointed you toward the book, Magic in the Moment, Mindfulness in Real Time, I hope you pick it up. There's more of each of these stories in there than I could fit into a 15-minute episode. And then there are 15 more chapters waiting after these first 5. The link is in the show notes. Thank you so much for spending the summer with me. Thank you for staying curious, for listening, for being willing to sit with these ideas and let them do whatever work they need to do. The magic is already here. Hey, thanks for listening. I want to give a big shout out to John Gehring of Story Trust Media for his expert editing and wonderful production guidance. I also am deeply grateful for the ongoing support I receive from Meditation for Leadership and their sponsorship. So that's all for now. Until next time, this is Clayton Platt saying, watch for those moments of magic when mindfulness shows up in real time in your life.